Welcome to Disney A History, a podcast where we discuss the history of different Disney characters and their impact on pop culture throughout the ages. My name is Lauren, and along with my co-host Abby, we thank you for joining us on this magical adventure. On this episode of Disney A History, we will be discussing Aurora. We will cover her original fairy tale, the Disney adaptation, and finally, her impact on pop culture. We are going to be talking about the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale, and for continuity's sake, for our podcast, we're just going to call it the title of the princess. So when we cover Jasmine later on, the podcast will be called Jasmine versus the movie title. So the purpose of Sleeping Beauty was to show that good conquers evil. That's it. That's the purpose. And I think they went a really roundabout way to show that good conquers evil. And even, I don't know, it's a very strange tale, and you're about to find out why.
I mean, my only issue with the good conquering evil is that the good guy isn't always that good. So it's kind of like a lukewarm beats evil.
Yeah, that's accurate.
To emphasize that, I'll tell you a little bit of the story of the original Aurora, whose name was Talia. And this one is by Giambattista.
Giambattista Basile.
It's Italian, and I am not Italian, so sorry that I butchered that. I did look it up, but I'm still not good at it. But basically, in his version, it's totally different from the one that we know, in the fact that they did have the daughter that they always wanted, but instead of fairies coming to her christening, it's actually wise men and astrologers that come to predict her future. And they predict that she is going to get a splinter of flaxseed in her finger and that she's gonna be put in a little bit of danger and fall asleep. So in his version, Aurora's name is actually Talia, and instead of fairies, there are wise men and astrologers who come to predict her future, and they predict that a splinter of flax is going to impale her and cause her to fall asleep. So of course they burn all the spindles and everything, and all the flax, like everything that could possibly hurt her, and she still finds it, falls asleep. You know, the usual. She gets curious and finds it. Except this one's more by accident. It's not the evil queen trying to do anything. And from there, they lay her down. She looks all pretty. A guy comes, does some not so good things to her while she's looking so pretty and asleep and can't protect herself. He leaves because why would he stick around after that, you know? So she's actually got pregnant from that with twins. Fairies help her out of giving birth, and she's unconscious still. And he's chilling with his wife, and then suddenly remembers, hey, there's a really pretty, beautiful girl in the woods. Like, I should go check that out again. And he finds her having two babies, and he's like, oh my gosh, they're beautiful. I love them, sun and moon. And tells the fake Aurora, Talia, all her stories that happened while she was asleep. And she's like, wow, I really love you. This is a really cool thing. And so he ends up going back after spending some time with her back to his wife. He's just talking to himself, trying to remember the names because he didn't want to forget like last time. And the wife's going on like, why does he keep on talking about the sun and the moon and Talia? Like, who are these people? And no one's telling her anything until she gets someone to tell her. And then she's obviously furious about this and wants them gone. So she ends up inviting them to the kingdom without the prince's knowing and tries to eat the children and serve it to her husband. He eats it and she's like, ha 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 ha, you just ate your children, he, but doesn't actually tell him. And then that's not good enough for her. So she actually invites Aurora, Talia, to be killed. And so, of course, she comes and she realizes what's going on. So she asks to not have her clothes burned with her because they're really nice and the queen should have them if she's not going to be using them anymore. So the queen agrees and Talia's screaming, crying the whole time. The prince comes when he realizes that someone's in danger and saves her. And then he ends up getting the queen killed because, I mean, like, obviously she needs that. The person who helped her gets killed, and the cook is like, whoa, 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 I actually saved your kids. You should reward me. So he did. And then Talia, the prince, and the kids lived happily ever after from there. So, really fun story. I wouldn't call the prince a good guy after what he did to his wife and to Talia. But I mean, like, at least he did wake her up, so there's something going for him.
Yeah, he's a cheater and, you know.
Yeah. He's a real great guy, stand up man.
Trying to keep it family friendly, but this story is not family friendly, and we do not recommend you read this fairy tale to your children. But feel free to read it for yourself because it is an interesting read, to say the least. And also, if you get a chance, read the Goodreads reviews because that's really entertaining as well. I enjoyed reading those because they were, very similar thoughts to my own. All right. But the one that Disney used, just like with Cinderella, they used Charles Perrault's version, and his was called Sleeping Beauty in the Wood. And it was published in either 1995, not 1995. Why did I just say 19? I mean, that was when one of the theatrical releases was. They re released it into theaters, and I believe one of them was 1995. Anyway, 1695 or 1697. I found two sources that kind of clashed. So while the book that he published with like the tale that had Cinderella in it also had the Sleeping Beauty one, he may have published this one prior to that, is like my best guess. Not I couldn't find a like actual source for it, but I saw two different years for it. So I'm just putting it out there for you. So in the story, there's only a few differences because what you see in the Disney animated version is pretty much what you get when you read Charles Perrault's version. The main difference was that the king sent some people to go out and look for all the fairies in the land and invite them back for the christening of the daughter, and they brought back 7 fairies. And then there was an 8th fairy that was thought to be dead or enchanted. She shows up with her panties in a twist and mumbles under her breath that she wants to curse the child, and a young fairy hears her and hides behind the curtain so that she can be the last one to give a gift to the young princess, to try to either undo or remedy what the older fairy tries to do. So the older fairy does the spinning wheel curse, and the younger fairy comes out and says, "It won't be a death, but it'll be a deep sleep. And the deep sleep will only last 100 years. Then a king's son will wake her." And there was also no age restriction to this curse, so it wasn't like by the sunset on her 16th birthday. That wasn't a thing. It was just like she'll prick her finger at any point in her life. So it actually made more sense for them to burn all the spinning wheels at this point, because when we talk about the Disney version, we can talk about my issue with the plot in that regard. The king and queen go to their summer palace, and the princess goes for a walk in the woods where she comes upon an old woman that had never heard the king's proclamation. She asks the old woman to show her how she is spinning because she has a spinning wheel, and she's doing it. And she goes and touches it, and like she doesn't know how to do it, and she pricks her finger and passes out. The prince stumbles upon the castle later. He goes in and he actually just kneels beside her bed, which honestly, that's so wholesome. He just kneels beside her bed and she wakes up. Bada bing, bada boom. She's safe. And while we usually think that that's the end of the story because that's what we're told, there's actually a part 2 to the story. And it has to do with the prince's mother. So the prince's mother is actually an ogress, and his father had married her because they needed the money, and she was a very rich ogress. She must have had a way better swamp than Shrek did, I'm just saying. Okay, so the princess wakes up and they fall in love and they, have a good chat, and they try to get married as fast as they can. Yeah, they get married in the chapel of the castle, and the prince left the next morning to return to his kingdom where his father needed him. So the prince told him that he lost his way in the forest as he was hunting, and that he had lain in the cottage of a charcoal burner where he gave him cheese and brown bread. Just add details to my lie. And his father was a good man and believed him, but his mother could not be persuaded that it was true, and she was upset, and she was like, "I just think he's lying to me." And he was. And But he began traveling back and forth to the princess, and he traveled for about 2 years. And she had two of his children, and the eldest was a daughter. They named her Morning, and the youngest, who was a son, was called the Day. So that's kind of where they got the name Aurora from, because in some translations it actually says Aurora for the dawn. And so that was where they got Aurora for Sleeping Beauty's, or Disney's version of Sleeping Beauty. His mom gets super jealous, wants to have her kill, actually wants to eat the children because, okay, so his father dies. His mother finds out, wants to eat her grandchildren. The cook tricks her by cooking a different animal. She falls for it, tries to have the Aurora, yeah, Sleeping Beauty. She doesn't have a name in this. She tries to have Aurora killed, and she fails because, again, the cook saves her. And then the prince comes back and he's upset at his mother. She had planned to have Aurora killed, and then it backfired, and they ended up killing the prince's mother. The last line is, but he's okay. The king could not be but very sorry, for she was his mother, but he soon comforted himself with his beautiful wife and his pretty children. So this is supposed to be a tale about good conquering evil, which, I mean, ultimately it does, but also, like, it's like, ah, my mom died, but at least my wife's hot and my kids are good looking. But at least he didn't physically harm her while she was sleeping. So that's a plus. This prince is actually a better guy than the other one.
So I think the best version of the story is going to be Grimm's version of the story. And I feel like it's just because it's easier to understand, easier to digest, and not so triggering as some other forms. So the story starts off a little different in the fact that the queen ends up saving a little fish that got stuck in water, and the fish tells her that she's going to finally bear the child that the king and her have been wishing for. And they decide to give the princess the name of Briar Rose, which you'll remember from Disney being her pseudonym, and this one is actually her real name. So that's a little fun fact that Disney pulled out from the story. And I guess it's easier just to go into the differences. So another difference would be that there was no like three fairies. It was actually supposed to be 13. And the reason why the 13th one, the evil one, wasn't invited was because they didn't have enough golden dishes. And the fairies need to all have like the same golden dish. They didn't have time to make another one, and they couldn't serve her on a regular dish. So they're just like, she probably won't miss out on the party anyways. So they got to the end of the service, and the fairies were giving out their little gifts. And right before the last one could go, the 13th one came in and wished her dead. And then the 12th one was like, whoa, well, I still have my gift to grant. It'll just be sleep for 100 years. So she's actually going to be like 115 at the end of the story. So that's a great age difference. But at least she was asleep for 100 years, so it kind of fixes the issues. She's just going to be a little out of touch. But she's pretty, so she doesn't have to be in touch. At least back in the day. So another difference would be that the princess never has to hide. Like, she's not hidden away in the forest. So she actually gets to stay with her parents. And that's kind of cool that she gets to actually like have a relationship with her parents. She's not hiding out in the woods with the fairies pretending to be humans. And another difference would be that the prince comes along to the castle, and it's been about 100 years already. So when he fights the thorns, it's actually not too bad. He doesn't get entangled in it like other people would. So the prince was so amazed by her beauty that he went and bent over and kissed her. So the only thing that I don't like about this version is that she wakes up by a kiss like in the movie, where I like the fact that like the other prince would just kneel by her side like a gentleman. That's more along the lines of something I would like, but maybe back in the day this is what people liked, so
I mean, the way Disney does it, like, they had met before,
yeah.
so it was, and they had, already, like, were crushing on each other, and then, I don't know, it was, I'm okay with it in the movie. Like, it's a cartoon, and it's sweet. But, yeah, in real life, I would have been like, boy, you better back up.
Especially in this version, like it's been 100 years. He wasn't even around. He's never met her. You can't even like
Yeah.
try to say he's met her because he wasn't one of the people that fell asleep. So it's just a little non-consensual, creepy for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do like this version. I think it was very quick and snappy, got to the point. I didn't get bored through it, and it wasn't triggering in any way.
Yeah, so the thing with this version, the Grimm version, they did have the part 2 like the other stories do with the mother slash wife, but they weren't sure if they were the same story, so they like separated them in the book so it doesn't look like they're the same story, but like they could be the same story, which according to the previous versions we've read, they are connected. I think that about wraps up our history of it. Let's jump into the Disney version. We are going to start off talking about the art and animation style. And the biggest thing to talk about here was that Walt's goal for the movie was to create a moving illustration. He wanted this movie to be pristine and gorgeous.
I also read that this was something that he wanted to make for a long time before the company even really took off. So this was like his dream. But then, like, because it's his dream, he wanted it to be pristine, perfect, and that's what made it take so long.
And so they announced, or he announced, a month before Cinderella was released in 1950, he was like, okay, so I'm just going to let y'all know that our next big princess project is going to be Sleeping Beauty. And then they began working on it in 1951. And the movie wasn't released until 1959. So that's 8 years that they took to make this movie, which is crazy.
When it takes 24 drawings for 1 minute of animation and it's a full length, like, that's a ton of work. And then they weren't allowed to use smears, which is when they do like elongated emotions and stuff to like get a movement. Everything had to be exact, like you can pause anywhere and it's perfect. I can see why it took so long to do this movie.
And they used a larger film.
Yeah, and they used the extra large film.
Yeah, because originally they were using 35 millimeter film, but for this they used 70 millimeter film.
Because of the 70 millimeter film, they could only display the movie in certain theaters when they first released it.
Yes, which was a little bit to their detriment because while Snow White and Cinderella saved the studio, Sleeping Beauty did not save the studio. They actually lost a lot of money during the initial box office release. They ended up making it up later because they did 4 theatrical releases later on. So they have made their money back from it now, but at first they didn't, and it was quite devastating to the studio.
In some ways, it could be looked at as a success because they were in the top 10 for something.
They were the number 2 box office release in 1959, second to Ben Hur, but still compared to previous films of theirs, this was a flop.
And the fact that people nowadays don't even really care for this movie, too.
I know. She's a modern day flop too, which is really sad. Like this is a pop culture comment, but I had to comment. Like cuz people I'll go ahead and talk about it cuz our sections kind of intertwine sometimes. So I'll go ahead and say it. But the reason back when we did our program and like we were talking to our roommates and they were like, "Who's your favorite princess?" And I would say Aurora, but only because I knew nobody else would say her. Because I even in high school whenever like the Hunger Games first came out, my librarian, we were friends, and so like she was like, "Oh, you would really like this book. Like it's really good." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, I don't know. Like everybody else is reading it. I don't, I don't really want to get into it." And I read it later on in college and I loved it. So like if I would have read it back then, I could have been in the fandom a lot sooner. But anyway, with Aurora, like I like things that are more under the radar and underrated. So I always said Aurora, but not because of any particular reason, just because I'm not like other girls and I didn't want to pick the same princess as everybody else.
I mean, I like her. I just get bored during her movie, so I could never even pretend that she's my favorite.
Well, and that's the thing. I do enjoy the movie. I think the movie is gorgeous. And again, like you can pause it at anywhere in the film and it's perfect. And you could like print it out and put it on your wall. Like it's a piece of art. This film is a piece of art and I do appreciate that about it. And I like watching it. I don't get bored during it. I get bored during action movies. So like the dragon scene I get bored at, but everything else I love. And the music, we can talk about the music for a second. I don't know how to say the guy's name. I'm going to butcher it. I've looked it up. I've heard people say it over and over again. And so I'm going to do the best I can. But there was a ballet, and the composer that wrote the music for the ballet, Tchaikovsky.
It's really long and hard to say. I've tried to say it a bunch too, and I just can't do it.
Like, you all know who I'm talking about. Like, he's a famous composer, okay? It starts with a T and then it has a CH. Tchaikovsky. I can't say it. This is embarrassing. But yeah, so they wanted the music to be based off of his ballet of Sleeping Beauty. And the composer that ended up working on it was like, it would have been a lot easier to just write my own music. It's a lot harder to like copy someone's work without making it obvious. So he was like, he worked a long time trying to like pull the like themes out of his music that he could, work with in this film. So when you watch it, like it's almost filled with music beginning to end. There's very little like silence in the movie. Like even under some of their lines, there's, the orchestra playing. So I think that's really cool. I really enjoy it. I actually have not seen the Sleeping Beauty ballet. I should. I've seen Cinderella on ballet or as a ballet, but I would like to see this one. Obviously, it's like, the
I've
ballet.
I've only seen the Nutcracker, but I am really interested in going seeing like other ballets, all the Disney inspired ones.
Well, this one wasn't inspired. This one was before.
To me, it's inspired by Disney because that's my inspiration to go. Is that
Okay.
something I can recognize from Disney? The voice actress for Sleeping Beauty, she went on to do opera after this, but she
Mm.
still would always say that Sleeping Beauty was her favorite role to do and that she would do that 100 times, never say no if they ever asked her to do something again.
So the inspiration for Maleficent's style, the animator got inspiration from a Czechoslovakian art book, which was of religious paintings, and he liked the triangular shapes and colors that was in that like evil art piece. And so like that's where he got his inspiration from Maleficent. And then he decided to add like goat horns to her. And then literally Prince Philip's name is based off of Prince Philip that just actually recently passed away. Okay, so the way they designed the three good fairies was actually really cute. So Frank and Ollie did like a study on little old women. Every time they would go somewhere, they would watch how the little old women around them would walk and act. And then there was another stylist that was working on the fairies with them, Don DeGrady, and he said the key to the women was that he would watch women that were wearing big hats on their heads and how they would toddle along, which is accurate to how the fairies move in the movie, which is really cute.
Another thing I saw was that Walt originally wanted the fairies to look the same, the three good ones, and one of the other animators was like, no, that's not going to be visually appealing. We have to make them different. They all have to have their own unique features and own unique personality.
Yeah,
And they did the mock up, and Walt actually really liked how it came out.
which is good because I wouldn't want three identical fairies. That's boring. And I love the three fairies. When we were cast members, they had a limited edition fairy one, but I didn't get it. I like missed it, but it had the three fairies on the lanyard, and I wanted it. I ended up getting the three mice on a lanyard from Cinderella. I still have it. It's cute.
I don't think I have anything Sleeping Beauty related. Like, not even from the program, just in general.
I have a pin that one of our old roommates gave me that was fake, but I tried to tell her that sis, this is a fake one, and she was insistent that it was real. So Angela, if you find this podcast and you're listening, I'm sorry, but I tested it on the magnet and I almost lost a finger because it was so magnetic. And official Disney pins aren't supposed to be magnetic.
But she was also in food service, so like they didn't have to deal with pins as often as we did. And in merchandise, we got them every day, all day, so we knew how to spot a fake and a real.
But she was an annual pass holder and like they pin trade, like her family pin trades. And so she thought she was a pin trading expert. And I'm like, this is fake. Like the way the gloss was, the way it like wasn't flat when you rub your finger on it. It wasn't a real pen. But I still have it and it's fine.
It's a thought that counts.
Yeah. And I think she said she stole it. So that's just okay, so another thing we can talk about for a minute is Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland. So Disneyland opened in 1955, 4 years before Sleeping Beauty was released, and they actually didn't know what they wanted to call it because originally Walt was like, "Oh, like it'll be Snow White's castle," because obviously she's the princess, and but they like gone through a lot of things, and he was like, "Well, since we're working on Sleeping Beauty, let's just call it Sleeping Beauty Castle." And everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, that is a brilliant marketing plan," without the foresight of knowing that they were actually going to lose money on this movie, which was a little bit awkward because they had been promoting it for 4 years. So yeah, that was kind of a fun fact to know, like Sleeping Beauty's castle, and of course the art style that they used in the movie doesn't really match the castle that's in the park, but it is what it is.
Do any of the park castles match the princess they're supposed to match? Probably
No.
not. The three I know of don't match.
So, like, it doesn't bother me at all. If you're an architect, that might bother you. So, I do apologize if it's a pet peeve of yours. But there's nothing I can do about it. So, just out of luck. All right. And I think that transitions us right into the pop culture section, which is going to be a little bit different today, but that's okay. Okay, so in the pop culture section, we have a set list of questions that we like to answer for each character. And we start off with how many adaptations are there? The source that I found said there is approximately 16 like visual media adaptations in like movie and television. So that's kind of boring. Definitely a letdown after Cinderella's last week, which we knew that was to be expected. So it's fine.
But I'm not surprised that it's such a low number in the fact that just thinking off the top of my head, like, oh, like what other adaptations have I seen? And it's like I can't really think of any besides the live action.
I know. Yeah, so we can talk about our favorite adaptations. Um, Honestly, this is probably gonna be the only one where I don't know, it might not be the only time I say it because I do like I feel like Aladdin slash Jasmine are like there's not that many, so I'm gonna probably say it for them too. But the original Disney version is my favorite adaptation. Like even what they did in Once Upon a Time was a little lackluster, so they weren't like key features. Same with Cinderella in Once Upon a Time, which we didn't really talk about, but it was in existence.
This question's hard, and because like I can't really call any of them my favorite. None of them would be something I'd want to rewatch again.
Yeah, I guess you can just talk about like versions that stand out to you.
Well, in that case, the one that stood out to me was on Netflix called Charming. And it's not like the storyline was great, but it was definitely very intriguing how they decided to change it. Very inspired. So the biggest difference is that the main character actually isn't Aurora, it's the prince, and he's the one that gets cursed. But his curse isn't exactly the same because it's not falling asleep. It's that he's overly charming because the first fairy is like, I'm going to make you charming. And then the evil witch comes and is like, ha ha ha, too much charm. Everyone's going to fall in love with you. And on the eve of your 21st birthday, if you can't make anyone fall in love with you, truly love you, and you love them back, then no one in the kingdom will ever know what true love is because you'll have stolen the hearts of every woman in the kingdom.
Dang.
And then, I mean, like a few minutes in, you meet the girl that he's supposed to be madly in love with, and you find out that she's the one for him because she's the only one that doesn't find him charming. She's like, "You're really weird." And he's floundering for words because he's like, "Wow, you're really different. You're not wearing a dress, you're wearing adventure clothes." The storyline isn't great. You can figure it out within like the first 15 minutes. Like they basically tell you what it is. But the best part of it is actually all the voice actors because you have like really iconic people. You have like Ashley Tisdale in there, you have Avril Lavigne, you have the voice of SpongeBob, you have the voice of Timmy Turner, like just a bunch of like random people. And there's also some songs in there. So just figuring out like which character is which person is kind of fun. So watch it for that part, not for the whole storyline.
Will do. I'll have to check it out. We can talk about Maleficent 1 and 2 for a moment. I actually, like, I wasn't mad at Maleficent, the first one. The second one made me a little uncomfortable, but what I did like about Maleficent 2 was that the prince's mother was the bad guy, which goes back to our original Perot version, where she's an ogress and she's just evil. But I mean, of course, they changed it a little bit, but it's, a nice throwback to, in my opinion.
That's actually something I learned while doing the research for this because I did watch the Maleficent 2 movie, but I didn't know that there's a second part in the original story adaptation, so I didn't realize that that's what they were drawing from when they did this. So I kind of think I should go back and watch it again now that I know that, but I just didn't have the time this week to do it. But I actually do like the second one better, just because like it felt different. It didn't feel like they were trying to rewrite the first story poorly.
Right.
So that's why I like that one. But neither of them were something that I was like, wow, I really want to watch that again. They were just like, wow, I watched it. I know about them. Good. That's all I need.
Right. Oh, another thing we didn't talk about in the Disney section was my issue with the spinning wheel and sending Aurora away. So I'm gonna go on a little rant right now about how when Maleficent like says her curse like before the eve of her 16th birthday, like why didn't they just hide her away for like her 15th birthday? Or like why'd they have to burn all the spinning wheels and get rid of her? Like, pick one, bro. And then I get that they had to like hide her because Maleficent was trying to, trick her for all those years. I don't know, something about it didn't make sense. I was like, y'all are trying to make this perfect movie, but there's just that one thing that bothers me.
I never really had an issue with it. I don't really care about plot holes.
Yeah. Oh, when we talk about Beauty and the Beast, there's a lot of plot holes.
I'm like a author's like favorite person when it comes to plot holes because I won't even realize it until I see someone else point it out and I'm like, huh, yeah, I guess that was a plot hole. I think I've only picked up on a plot hole once.
All right. So now we can talk about whether or not this princess, Talia, No Name, and Briar Rose, were they good role models for young girls and boys?
All she did was sleep, so
This is definitely like the most awkward question for this story in particular cuz like she she's not a good role model.
in the original one, the Talia one, she actively chose to be with the prince after knowing what he did to her.
Mm,
And I mean, I've never been in that situation, so I actually can't fully speak for her, but I would assume that she would not think that was a great thing
yeah.
and that she should not be liking him. So I guess she's not a great role model, but really nothing go on from her. She had one smart moment and one questionable moment and a ton of sleeping. There's not really enough to judge anyone by.
Yeah. Yeah. This is just one of those questions that like I like to keep in every podcast, but it's like doesn't really apply to this. So she's in the Disney version, she's kind. I was trying to find people that were Aurora apologists because I mean I like the movie and I like the princess. Like I think she's, fine. But there was this one girl that wrote an article on like why everyone should love Aurora. And one of the reasons was because she doesn't make the animals like do her chores. She doesn't make them clean for her. She's just friends with them because she likes them. And I was like, I see your point, but also Cinderella and Snow White didn't force the animals to clean for her. They willingly helped her because they loved her. Like, okay, sis, go off, I guess.
I don't really know where else we could take this because there's just not much to work with. I mean, in the movie, she was really kind for the bits that she was awake, but you don't see her much in that. She's a baby, and then it's her birthday.
For her iconic 18 lines. Yeah. Oh well, it is what it is. Ultimately I enjoy the movie. I think it's gorgeous as an animation piece and as a piece of artwork. I like it. As a princess, I get why people say she's kind of a boring one, and that's fine. But I do enjoy her being in the lineup. So that's all I'll say about it.
I do appreciate how she's not one of those people that's like, wow, I need a husband or anything. She was just like, I had a dream about this guy once. And then she meets him. So
Yeah.
like that was kind of nice. She wasn't out there just constantly looking like Anna was.
In one of the stories, it talks about how it was implied that one of the good fairies, like while she was in her 100-year sleep, gave her dreams of the prince. So like good dreams. And so like when she woke up and saw the prince, like she's like, "Oh, I dreamed about you."
I think that makes it even cuter, the song.
So what would the world look like without Aurora?
Not much different. I mean, the castle would be different in Disneyland.
It would have been called something else, yeah. But it probably would look the same because it's not really her
Yeah.
castle.
So would that one have been Cinderella, you think? And then Disney World would have had a different castle?
Maybe I think he probably would have just gone with Snow White though.
Yeah. Did they? Yeah, they did show a bit of a castle in that one.
Yeah.
Not as iconic as Cinderella, though.
Yeah. I know people are like Disneyland or bust, but I mean, we did our program at Disney World, so I'm a little biased, but I like Cinderella's castle. I've never been to Disneyland, but I've heard that it's like underwhelming after you're used to seeing Cinderella's castle and like you come in and Sleeping Beauty's castle is a little bit smaller, which is fine. Like, you, you don't have to be massive, but it's kind of underwhelming when you go in. So, I'm sorry.
When I was working there as merchandise, whenever I was at the register and it got to like a little bit of a lull because someone got a lot of things and you kind of just run out of questions every now and then, I'd be like, so, have you been to Disneyland? And if they said yes, I'd be like, so which one's better, Disney World or Disneyland? And I feel like more people said Disney World just because they were able to take like more days to do everything. Whereas in Disneyland, you could do everything in 1 or 2 days. So then they got a little bit more repetitive.
Yeah.
So like they loved both, but it was just fun having the difference, like depending on if they wanted a short vacation or a long vacation.
Yeah, whenever people ask me, like, do you recommend Disneyland or Disney World? And I usually say World. I was like, if you like want, there's more choices at World. There's 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, and umpteen thousand resorts to explore and stay in. So there's like that's what I recommend. But if you just want a short vacation or you don't want to be overwhelmed, then definitely try out Disneyland. I mean, it's definitely on my bucket list to go to Disneyland. I want to see Cars Land and all that good stuff.
I've never been to Disneyland, but they always get the cool merchandise first. So that's always a nice little reason to go to.
Yeah, they do. All right. So, since this podcast is a little bit shorter than the rest, I thought that maybe we would do something a, a lot of bit different and do a couple of quizzes about Aurora and Sleeping Beauty. There will be some other facts in here that we're going to talk about the movie when they pop up. All right. So the first quiz we're going to do is called the Ultimate Sleeping Beauty Trivia Quiz from ohmydisney.com, and we're going to do it together.
So the first question is, when did Maleficent say the curse would occur?
I said this earlier in the podcast, before the sun sets on her 16th birthday.
And we got it right.
Surprise, surprise. All right, the next question says the music and songs in this version of Sleeping Beauty are inspired by the ballet version with music by which composer? The TCH
The one that
Skowski.
the only one I can't pronounce. That's the guy.
Oh, we got it correct. Imagine that.
Why did the king and queen name their daughter Aurora?
She filled their lives with sunshine.
It's actually because they went by their firstborn, so they went alphabetically. They had to
Oh,
start with A.
that's one of the the answers. It's wrong. She filled their lives with sunshine. Oh, look, I'm correct. Who gives Aurora the gift of song?
So the options are Flora, Fauna, Merryweather, and Maleficent. And I don't know who the fairies are in general, but the gift of song would be the second fairy that came.
And when we see the fairies, they usually go in order of Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. So I'm going to choose Fauna. Oh, look, I'm correct.
On what day does the film begin? The options are Christmas, New Year's Day, a holiday in Aurora's honor, and Aurora's 16th birthday.
So a holiday in Aurora's honor. Final answer. It's correct. Imagine that. What is the name of Aurora's father? King Stephen, King Trident, King Louis, or King David? King Stephen.
Barbara Luddy, who voiced Merryweather, also voiced which Disney animal? Lady, Perdita, Duchess, or Marie?
She actually did Lady from Lady and the Tramp.
That's another movie I've only seen once.
Abby, you can't keep saying these things.
I'm a really bad Disney fan.
Clearly. Oh, my word.
What is the name of Prince Philip's father? King Philip, King Hubert, King Eli, or King Fergus?
King
King Hubert.
Hubert.
I always want to call him Herbert.
Herbert. What title does the announcer give the fairies when they fly into the banquet hall? Lady, fairy, mistress, or madam? I believe he calls them mistress. Mistress Fauna, Mistress Merryweather, Mistress Flora. Oh, look, I'm correct.
Who gives Aurora the gift of beauty? Flora, Fauna, Merryweather, or Maleficent?
It would be Flora.
Definitely Maleficent.
While bestowing her gift, Fauna conjures up images of what animal? Well, a butterfly, a cat, a bird, or a fawn. Since we know that she gives her the gift of music, a bird would be the only one that makes sense.
When Maleficent acknowledges those in attendance at the christening, what does she call the fairies? Commoners, rabble, riffraff, or holy poly?
Oi polloi!
Hoi polloi. I'm not sure about this one actually. It could be rabble. It's 50-50.
I actually am not, I don't remember this. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
I kind of want to go with rabble.
Okay, you go with rabble, I'll go with hoi polloi.
I was right.
Ah!
I'm 1
Rabble.
point ahead now.
That's so weird.
I don't remember that at all. It didn't stand out to me.
No, no, definitely not. There's just so much going on in that scene. It's like the good question to stump us, though. Fill in the blank. When Merryweather says Maleficent knows everything, Fauna says she doesn't know anything about blank or blank. Love and kindness, hugs and kisses, family and children.
Prince Philip tells his father, "Now, father, you're living in the past. This is the blank century."
14th century.
It's going to list the options, but okay. Too fast.
Where does Maleficent live? The Thunder Mountains, the Forbidden Mountains, the Dark Mountains, the Dragon Mountains.
It's the Forbidden Mountains. I like the name, so it stood out. Who provided the speaking and singing voice of Aurora? Mary Costa, Paige O question mark Hera, Adriana Casaloti, or Eileen Woods? Mary
Mary
Costa.
Costa.
And fun fact, she's actually alive today at age 91.
Yeah, precious. 91 years old. Why can't Merryweather turn Maleficent into a hop toad? Merryweather is allergic to toads. Flora threatens to break her wand. The fairy's magic can only be used to bring happiness. Only Fauna can turn people into animals. I'm gonna go with fairy magic can only be used to bring happiness.
Because the line after that was one of the fairies saying, "But it would bring me happiness."
I love that.
Whose cottage do the fairies use in the forest? A farmer's cottage, a miner's cottage, a miller's cottage, or the woodcutter's cottage?
I believe it's the woodcutter's cottage.
I feel like it's the only one that makes sense because they already had the miners in Snow White. The farmer would have animals, and the miller would probably have some stuff to mill. So, woodcutter makes sense. It's in the forest. Plenty of wood.
Yay, we got it right. What name do the fairies give to Aurora while they are raising her? Red Rose, Briar Rose, Sleeping Rose, or Beauty Rose?
Briar Rose.
Briar Rose.
What do the fairies send Aurora to find so that they can get ready for her party? Water, firewood, berries, or flowers?
Berries? The Veil of the Berries. If you're a Thumbelina fan, you'll get that reference. What is the name of Prince Philip's horse? Major, Maximus, Samson, or Pierre? It is Samson, but if you look at the animation style and like the way they drew him, he does look very similar to Maximus, which I think is super cool. And we haven't talked about the similarities that the story has to Rapunzel, but they do have a lot of similarities. Even as far as like both of them being barefoot for most of the movie, which is really funny to me.
Who bakes Aurora's birthday cake? Merryweather, Maleficent, Flora, or Fauna?
It was Fauna. What colors are the dress and the cake that Briar Rose receives when she gets back to the cottage? Well, I know for a fact it's a blue cake. So the options are blue dress, blue cake, blue dress, pink dress, pink cake, pink dress, blue cake. So it's a blue cake and a blue dress, I believe.
And we are right. When does Briar Rose tell Philip she will meet him again? That evening, tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening, or next week?
That evening, what word do the two kings use while toasting their children? Cheers, scumps, skull, or lecheum? Lecheum? Well,
I think
I
it's
don't
skull.
know.
I think I got it right. It didn't tell me if I was wrong.
Which one did you choose?
Skull?
Skull. Skull! Nope, it's wrong. Oh well.
Well, I know it wasn't cheers, so it must have been the second option.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it'd be the last one that's we couldn't even pronounce. How does Maleficent's raven spot the cottage? He hears Aurora singing, he sees Aurora come home, he sees magic colors coming out of the chimney, or he smells the cake baking.
He sees the colors coming out of the chimney. You spend all these years being discreet, and then you have a magic battle with your fairy sister. Whatever. What does Maleficent call herself? The queen of villainy? The mistress of all evil? The evilest fairy that ever lived? Or the master of evil?
The mistress of all evil.
Mm-hmm. And I know that because when I saw it, I was like, oh, they used that line in Grey's Anatomy. Because Addison, Derek, and Weber in the elevator together, and Derek had just said something negative about her, and she goes, I prefer to be called the mistress of all that is evil.
Fill in the blanks. Fairies give Prince Philip the sword of blank and the shield of blank to battle Maleficent. Righteousness and happiness, truth and virtue, good and power, or justice and freedom.
Truth and virtue. What do Maleficent's goons not use to try to stop Philip from escaping? Arrows, boiling oil, fire, or rocks?
I think fire? I'm not sure.
I'm
Yeah,
not
it was
sure
fire.
either. It was
I
fire?
clicked it. I clicked it already. In the final scene before the storybook closes, what color is Aurora's dress? I believe it is pink.
Forever stays pink. Okay, we need to talk about that for a second. So the reason that her dress keeps changing is based off of a real life like myth. Like I couldn't find any source to confirm this, but I'd heard it like a long time ago that the animators couldn't decide what color to make her dress. I'm team pink because the logic behind that is that Cinderella's dress was just blue. So why would you have another princess that dresses blue? Go with pink.
But does Cinderella's dress as blue really count? It was a silvery blue. Like it had barely any color in it.
I mean, that was the argument was like, well, no, like blah, 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 blah. I think they should have just went with pink. Although I do like the trope of them like fighting over it is funny. Another thing that we didn't talk about is that there was significantly less gags in this movie than the previous movies because they wanted this to be like an actual like cinematic experience versus being just full of jokes. So there were less gags. There were still gags with the fairies, but less.
But almost everything that happened in the movie caused like the next scene. There wasn't anything random just to make someone laugh.
Right.
So like even that joke that I mentioned earlier about the fairy being like, but it makes me happy, it still transitioned into the next bit. It wasn't just something thrown in there to make people laugh. That way it would be like his perfect film. It wasn't just a cop out.
Right. So the actress who provided the voice of Maleficent also voiced a Disney villain in what other movie? 101 Dalmatians, Alice in Wonderland, The Little Mermaid, or Cinderella? Well, we talked about this last week, and it was Lady Tremaine in Cinderella. Yay! 29 out of 31 correct.
I got 30 out of 31. The one where we went 50-50.
Yeah, the what did they cheers to? Like what? I don't
Yeah.
know. All right. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out until the very end. We appreciate it. I guess we'll see you next time. We'll put these links in. I don't can't decide whether or not we want to do like a blog page or if we want to stay on Reddit or what. Go ahead and join us on Reddit and let us know where we should like camp out. Where should we be posting things? Because I still don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to Disney A History. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. For further discussions, join us on our Reddit. For bonus content, you can find us on TikTok and YouTube. See you real soon!